Hi everyone, this is Achuta Bava from Nightlight Astrology, and today I'm doing a live cast to dive into the fourth part of a 10-part series that I'm doing called 10 Things That I've Learned in 10 Years of Professional Astrology. So I thought I'd do a live cast because it's a Friday, and it would be fun to spend a little time with you guys before we dive into the weekend here. Also, if you've been following along with this series, like I said, this is the fourth part of a 10-part series. If you listen to this and you like it, I recommend going back to the beginning of this series and sort of tuning in and listening to each part individually, because they each kind of build, every talk in this series builds on the previous one in a sense. But you could jump in very easily, and this talk should make sense to you, no problem anyway. Now, it was basically in July that I realized I've been a professional astrologer for 10 years, and I was like, wow, that's, it's kind of a milestone. And then I realized that it was a good time to start reflecting on what I'd learned over the past 10 years. And so this series was kind of born of the desire to reflect upon what it's been like to be a professional astrologer for 10 years. And in the process, I figured out that I've done all different kinds of readings in all different kinds of settings, of all different kinds of lengths, with all different kinds of people, over 10,000 different types of charts and readings that I've looked at. So I thought, wow, that is kind of a milestone, and not that I would consider myself still feeling like a newbie, really. But I started reflecting in a journal about what I've learned, and I thought it would be fun to share what I've learned in a series. So this series was born of the desire to reflect on those experiences, and hopefully you find these interesting and useful for yourself as you're a student of astrology or someone who's interested in astrology. Hopefully this helps you to kind of crystallize your own insights and reflect on what you've learned and what astrology has meant to you. Each talk, I come up with a basic phrase, or kind of like a catchphrase that serves as one of the 10 insights that I'm presenting in this series. So in this one, the phrase is "doing good isn't the point," or you could say becoming good isn't the point. So that's what I want to talk about today. And again, this particular insight was born out for me over the course of so many readings, and hopefully it will make sense to you. And by the way, feel free, if you have questions as I go or reflections that you'd like to share, feel free to enter them into the chat box. Um, so, and also I'd love to hear where you guys are all coming from as people, are participating or watching live. I always love to hear where people are tuning in from. I think that's really interesting. So doing good isn't the point. Becoming good isn't the point. So here's the thing, is that in, let's say, 10,000 plus charts, one of the most common things that I have noticed is that when people walk into a reading, it starts off, I want to know what I'm supposed to do. That's one of the most basic repeated questions that I get all of the time, is what am I supposed to do? And there's a lot of assumptions built into this question. So let's talk about maybe one of the most, kind of mundane examples of this question. Especially in Western culture, we are raised with this very heroic notion that each of us has like a very special career path that we're supposed to find, or like a professional or vocational calling that we are supposed to pursue. And you're taught this from a very young age, that you have to grow up to, fulfill your dreams, become what you were born to be, something like that. And usually this translates into having a kind of job that you love to do, making a positive difference on the world, having a positive impact on others, being well liked or appreciated, being masterful at something, and so forth. So the first thing that I want to do is just sort of dispel this myth when it comes to astrology. What have I seen in like 10,000 charts? I've seen that largely people are not ever finding this. I know that sounds a little depressing, but here's what I usually see. I don't usually see whether a person is 25 or 65. I don't usually see people coming in feeling like, yep, that's it. I found it. I found the thing that I'm supposed to do. I found my calling, and it has completely fulfilled me. Sometimes I do talk to people who are very happy with their jobs, who really feel like they found their niche, when it comes to a vocation or a skill or something like that. So I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but by and large, when it comes to finding your sense of purpose or what I ought to be doing with my life in some vocational sense, people may get they may get a little close to it. For example, you may do something that you don't feel terrible about, right? And that's better than what a lot of people can say, because a lot of people work jobs, I don't know, laying brick. People have jobs delivering the mail and doing all sorts of things, like everyday things that are probably not that glorious. Like, I'm going to be a doctor who goes into war torn countries and heals the children, or like something like that. Um, I don't know, whatever the fantasy might be, but a lot of people from start to finish live lives where they work jobs that, if they're lucky, they are not just something mundane that they tolerate, or worse, they can't stand. They might be something that they feel does some good, has some enjoyment, feels like it utilizes certain elements of their character or their skills, but by and large, they will still feel a certain level of dissatisfaction with. And there's always questions about when that might get better or when that might change. And I've seen that again, like that's a sort of a general truth, whether you're 20 or 60. But that's not even, I have really, really good clients though, who don't always come in living with that kind of myth that I'm not happy until I find like a vocation, or I become very masterful or well recognized in some area in life, like professionally. A lot of people, I feel like a lot of my clients are really realistic in knowing that, maybe I'm never going to be perfectly happy with a career, and that's okay. Um, the deeper question that I usually get is, it goes one step deeper. It's not just like, what am I supposed to do as in a career or vocation, but it's, what am I supposed to do as in, what am I supposed to get better at? What am I supposed to improve upon? People usually come in with a sense of, that they're deficient in certain ways, psychologically or morally, or in terms of some area in their life. Like, I know that I need more of this, or I need to become something that I'm not, or I'm deficient in some area and I need to get better at it. People sometimes come in with pretty clear ideas about what they think that is, and then they'll say, like, how do I do that, or how do I get better at that? Or people will come in saying, I just want to know what my homework is. Sometimes even phrased that way. That word is often used, homework. Like, what am I supposed to, in this lifetime, what are the lessons that I'm supposed to learn? Or what are the things that I'm supposed to, like, improve upon? Okay, so what I want to start off by saying is that, first of all, this is normal. I don't look down my nose upon it as a reader. Like, obviously, people have these questions, and they're legitimate questions, because there is a dimension of our lives, of our destiny paths, that involve things that we are deficient at, or areas in life that we aren't necessarily good at, that we might want to get better at. And so self-improvement and looking at the chart and being able to see what you're good at or what you might need to improve upon is definitely an aspect of astrology, and a very valuable one. However, again, what have I learned over 10 years in so many charts? It's that self-improvement is not the point. So I want to kind of elaborate upon that as I go along. Self-improvement isn't the point. Self-improvement isn't the thing that makes people happy. Even people who manage to improve themselves or improve upon some area of life and taste the fruits of success in something that they were previously, deficient at, that even these people are not happy. That there will still be problems and areas of life that are still unsatisfying. And also, even more than that, what I want to say is that for ancient astrologers, um, like, self-improvement was not the point of life, nor was it the point of astrology. So let's unpack this a little bit. When people come in, they generally, I'm going to break this down a little bit more. They are generally living with an assumption, and this assumption is programmed into us in some of the same ways that we're programmed or taught that we should find the most heroic professional path or vocation or something like that. It's programmed into us from the time that we're little, that what it means to have success in life is to show measurable, you should be able to measure progress along a line, like along a linear line. Like, I was here and then I got here, and you can measure it somehow. And because of this, people are living with a kind of unconscious belief that spiritual growth is tantamount to doing good deeds and getting rewards, whereas spiritual stagnation or regression or somehow spiritual failure, let's just call it generally, is the equivalent of not being able to demonstrate some kind of measurable progress in different areas of life. Okay, let's just give an example. People come in other words, basically thinking, I will spiritually progress in this lifetime if I figure out how to get better at, relationships. I tend to be really independent and I have trouble, compromising with others. And so I need to get better at compromising and being more of a we person rather than a me person, or vice versa. Someone might come in and say, I tend to be such a we person that I count myself out and I need to be more of a me person. I need to take better care of myself or something like that. And then the belief is that I will get rewarded and I will find more happiness and I will grow spiritually, and that all of the good things that I'm looking for will come when I get better at that thing. And this is an unconscious paradigm that's operating for, I would say, most astrology clients. In fact, most of us. I'm not above it either. I think this way all the time. And there's a way in which reality reinforces this belief, because there's a sense in which all of this whole paradigm is true. We tell kids, for example, hey, do the right thing and you get a cookie. Do the right thing and you get a privilege. Do the wrong thing and you get something taken away. So we have this way of imagining that spiritual growth is like a measurable linear process where we demonstrate tangible, measurable growth with regard to certain lacks or deficiencies that we have. Okay, so that's the first part, that people walk in and then they tend to categorize it along these lines, and these lines are astrological lines, of course. I'm going to break it down into the most common areas that I see with people. I already mentioned one of them. One of them will be typically, I need to become more independent. I need to become more empowered. I need to be more assertive. I need to be, I'm less of a pushover, less passive, or I can't let people walk on me. I can't give too much to others. I need to take care of myself and put me first. I don't know, if I had to guess, I'd say 1 out of every 6 clients comes in telling me that that's what they believe that they need to do in order to grow spiritually and become happy. On the other hand, you will get people who will often say, I need to be less independent, and I need to learn how to coexist with others and be in relationships. Or people will say, in this lifetime, I'm looking to have a successful relationship because I'm used to traumatic relationships with others, or unhealthy power dynamics in relationships. And so in order to grow, I need to have a successful relationship. And that if I have one, that will be the measure of my spiritual growth in this lifetime. Okay. Let's go on. Similar, but a little bit different, will have to do with money and resources. I need to be more self-sufficient. No, I need to be more okay with receiving help from other people. Okay, if you're following along, if you study astrology, you know that these are tracking out along the house lines, right? This is like house 2 and 8. Previous one was like house 1 and 7. So in house 2 and 8, it's like, I need to be better at accepting help from others or giving help to others, or maybe I need to learn how to be more self-sufficient and clear and clear about my boundaries and what I consider to be my own time, money, energy, and resources versus what I share or give to others. And someone else may say, I need to learn how to accept help from other people because I tend to be way too I don't trust other people enough, or something like that. Okay, so again, there it is. And people, I can't tell you how many times people will walk in, and that's the measurable that they're looking for. They want me to look in their chart and figure out what it is that I'm deficient in that I need to get better at. And built in is this assumption that if I get better at these things, I will feel happier. And that this is like the evolutionary or sort of like karmic lesson that is somehow built into my chart. Now, I'm not going to deny that there are strengths and weaknesses in charts and areas where charts can guide us towards self-improvement. It is an amazing facet of astrology, but it's not the point of astrology. So but let's keep going for now. So I need to have more of my own mind. Oh, I need to learn how to submit my mind to something higher than myself. For example, I need to find teachers. On the other hand, I might need to question my teachers. You could see this go, or you could say that this is someone who needs to develop confidence in their own voice, their own intellectual intelligence, their own discernment, their own discrimination. On the other hand, one may need to learn how to take guidance from other people. One may be looking for their teachers or their path or their religion or something like that. And they may tend to resist such things just out of distrust. On the other hand, one may need to question things and not, blindly follow people or paths as they have in past lives or something like that, right? And people, again, very predictably think, if I get better at this, that's how I know I'm improving or progressing spiritually, and that's where happiness will be. Now, some people will be like, I need to have more of a base, find where my home is in the world, put down roots, be more grounded. Other people need to go out more, explore, take more risks. You see how there's these dichotomies all the time. I'm more of a stay-at-home person. I need to get out into the world, or I'm so work all the time. I need to learn to appreciate home and hearth a little bit more. You have people who will similarly look at whether or not they should belong to a group or march to the beat of their own drum socially, just in general. You'll have people who say, I need to leave the world behind. And you'll see other people who say, I need to get more involved in the world. I need to be more hands-on, more of a servant with my hands in the mud. And you'll see other people saying, I need to leave for the mountain. I need to, head to the hills and do some reflection and distance myself a little bit from the world. Again, I'll just repeat it one last time. So it's just so we really get it. I would say 75, 80% of my clientele over 10 years and 10,000 plus charts will walk in and they'll go, I know that there's some area in my chart that I suck at, or that I'm like where I'm deficient. And what is it, please? Because if I know what I have to improve upon, then I can go out and get better at that. And that is somehow the marker of my spiritual progress. Okay. And just to reiterate my response, yes, there is an element of your chart where you can see deficiencies, and there is going to be natural ways of compensating for those deficiencies along all of these different polaric lines. And that is one part of life. There is, when one thing becomes too strong, oftentimes the opposite gets neglected or marginalized, and we have to learn how to keep a kind of fluidity between, strike balances between all of these different kinds of moving dynamics in life, self-reliance versus dependency, and on and on and on. And it's very valuable to have that kind of insight. But ancient astrologers and the spiritual practices of astrology is not primarily about that. So what is it about, and how have I handled this particular element of astrology, because so many people come in thinking that this is what astrology is supposed to help them with? Okay. So for ancient astrologers, the truth of the matter is that we are each eternal spirit souls. And as eternal spirit souls, who we are and what reality is, in and of itself, 24/7 without fail, no matter what is happening, that what reality is, that what we are is the source of love, beauty, and happiness. And so for ancient astrologers, happiness was found when we become more situated on the throne of the heart. When we become more deeply comfortable and alive within our eternality, within our own soul, and when we start to see that same soulfulness in the world, in all things, whether they are deficient or abundant, whether they are light or dark, then we start to experience the fruit of spiritual reality, which is bliss, happiness, beauty, truth, knowledge, and so forth. So for ancient astrologers, the byproduct of spiritual life, a life lived um, in a tending of the soul, if we are tending to the life of the soul, then the byproduct of that is that we tend to the karma around us tends to get better, which means the things that we are deficient at, which the birth chart might point out, that those things they tend to become better, but as a byproduct, not as the point or not as the focus. It's kind of like saying, like, how, again, like, some of you guys who watch my channel for a while, you've probably heard me use this analogy before, but how do you measure the progress of intimacy in a relationship? It's not by, well, we've kissed 60 times, and so, we're at level 6 of intimacy. But if we kiss 40 more times and reach 100, then we'll be at level 10 or something like that. So it's intimacy, the possibility or the potential for intimacy to deepen is infinite. All of the, especially the yoga philosophy of the ancient seers tells us that any and all experiences in reality, when lived from the seat of the soul, become the means by which intimacy and love and depth of communion is perpetuated. So if you were to tell a person, a very enlightened person, not me, because I'm definitely not there, right? But if you're to tell a very enlightened person, hey, look, you're going to have 50,000 more lifetimes after this one, or even 1,000,000 more lifetimes after this one, and they're going to be filled with all different kinds of experiences and all different kinds of things that you get really good at, but then new deficiencies that crop up simultaneously that show that there's still a lot of things you suck at, right? And that's just going to keep going forever and ever. The person who is driven by the feeling that bliss spiritually is tantamount to mastering lessons and goals and becoming very accomplished and good will really freak out, because it's like, it from the standpoint of trying to constantly improve, you're just telling me that I think I'm close to the end of a marathon, but actually I'm not even in the first, like, quarter mile. Right? Whereas the person who is starting to be established in the reality of the soul, when you say 50,000 more lifetimes, to them, that means 50,000 more dates. And 50,000 more dates means 50,000 more opportunities for intimacy to grow, and for love and bliss and the erotic, mysterious thrill ride of existence to continue. Because when you're living life with the priority of the awakened spirit soul and its loving, intimate relationship with source and with all things, then you're no longer looking to kind of mount your experiences and master them, right? It's not like that. It's not like because, again, like, how comfortable are any of us with the idea that intimacy is a goal that we should be running towards, or a measurable that we should be trying to achieve in our relationships? So I'll never forget one time, when I was in the Amazon drinking ayahuasca, in the first night that I was in the Amazon, and I was listening to the sounds, like, in the jungle at night, and they were so terrifying, because there were things like stalking other things, and like things killing and eating each other. But there were also, like, these deeply mysterious, like, weird, like, bugs and birds and, like, all sorts of really bizarre stuff and noises. And when I was in ayahuasca ceremonies, one of the things that came through so very clearly is, yeah, this is reality, right? You can't sort of, like, the idea that our life is supposed to be like a perfectly pristine rose garden, is not, it's not true to the nature of reality in this universe. Because you look in the Amazon, the most beautiful flowers grow next to the most invasive species, and the beauty walks along with the ugliness side by side. That they're all a part of the texture of this amazingly exotic and profoundly terrifying and beautiful experience, and it's all there all at once. And the difference between people who experience any aspect of creation as inherently blissful, beautiful, insightful, meaningful, and those who don't is basically, in some ways, it's as simple as saying, Are you living life from the perspective of being an eternal being who has nothing at stake, that is just here to deepen the experience of love and connection? Or are you a being who is trying to master something and get somewhere because and in that paradigm, what's underneath that? Master something, get somewhere, improve, get rid of the uncomfortable things, whatever. Underneath that is essentially a discomfort with the way things are, with the way reality is, with the way that the soul is, with the way that light and dark coexist with one another. There's just discomfort with that. The weird thing is that we have to live in a world at the exact same time where we have a vested interest in light versus dark. Now, ancient seers were very aware of this, so they weren't just saying, hey, look, turn a passive eye to evil, because evil, good, it's all the same. You're just trotting along in the jungle of existence, right? It sounds nice, but actually there's a lot at stake in this world as well. So it's not that we're, on the other hand, it's not that we're supposed to check out of self-improvement. It's not that there aren't deficiencies in our character or in the world that we aren't supposed to try to do something about. However, we have to do them. We have to try to improve while understanding that nothing is actually at stake. That's part of the play. You have to participate in the play. You can't duck out of it. Because reality is this way doesn't give you an excuse from ducking out of moral investment in the character that you're playing and in the destiny that you're walking and so forth. And that's what tends to confound people so much, is that because we tend to lose sight of this bigger picture and this eternal truth about who we are. Because we lose track of that, then we tend to get overly invested in the stakes of the game that we're currently playing, even though there's nothing actually at stake. We get really, really bought and sold into. We're like a method actor that gets so invested in the plot that they may lose sense of themselves acting, and that's a little dangerous. We have to be very careful of that. We're actors on the stage. We're participating in the sport of creation, but we can't lose track of the fact that we're actors as well. We have to keep a sliver of that awareness with us. It's very important that we're cultivating that more. Gives us a way also of, contrary to what you might think, it actually gives us the ability to have more agency and more depth of experience and meaning and bliss within our destiny path. The more that we keep awareness of who and what we actually are and what is actually real in the big picture. So all of this is to say that people will come into a reading thinking, look, the chart has to tell me what I suck at and what I have to improve at. What are the lessons that I have to learn in order to somehow level up? But I'm telling you right now that people who play that game of thinking my happiness is tantamount to me getting better at something are never happy, because the weeds just keep coming up. You can pull weeds, and you can be really, really good at pulling weeds, but eventually you have to sit back and go, like, flowers come with weeds in this jungle of creation, like they coexist. And I better get comfortable with that. You could say that living a happy life, as far as I've seen from working with so many people and seeing what kinds of people are happy and what kinds of people aren't, is the equivalent of like, hey, look, if I see someone that's pulling weeds and doing their best to pull weeds in their own life and in the world, while trying to tend and bring out the beautiful things, but they're very aware of the fact that weeds are always going to coexist with flowers, those are the happy people, because they know the difference between spirit and matter, and therefore they can understand the right relationship between the two. And that's if I had to say the secret to happiness that I've seen in people's lives, like that's it. The people that are happiest are always the ones that are coming in. They might be interested in improving themselves, and I could help them with the chart, too, and saying, hey, look, this area may be a little deficient. Look at some lessons over here, and so forth. But look, are you tending to the life of your soul? Do you have a daily way of communing with what you are, with what is, both in you, in your environment, in your life, and in the world? Do you have a way of just communing with it and finding and feeling that love that is in all things in this beautiful, amazing garden? Because if you do, you will be a lot happier. You will be whistling while you work, pulling those never-ending weeds. And that's the person who says 50,000 more lifetimes. That just means 50,000 more dates. It doesn't mean 50,000 more relentless weeds I have to pull. It means 50,000 more lifetimes of whistling while I work. Because people know that the work of creation is the work of love, right? And that's the essential difference. So, all right, here's some planetary lines that people tend to freak out around. Let's do Moon Saturn. Moon Saturn is like, where do I belong? Where do I feel at home? Who cares about me? Where do I feel connected and safe? Saturn is, where do I feel misunderstood, kicked out, abandoned, hurt, left alone? And people always think, I just have to figure that out. I have to solve that somehow. Well, yeah, maybe that's part of your experience right now, but that's an eternal experience. That's like those are like two lights flashing in the garden of creation constantly. And they've always been doing it, and they always will be doing that. And the difference is whether or not you're experiencing the alternation of those themes from the standpoint of eternity, or whether you're experiencing it from the standpoint of a limited being that's very frustrated, afraid, feeling isolated, not sure, in doubt, and tending to think, I've got to solve something. I got to figure something out. Otherwise, I'm not going to be in a good way. Similarly, let's talk about the Saturn and the Sun. If you have Saturn and the Sun, one of the big things with Saturn and the Sun is always, am I being validated? Am I seen for who I am? Am I authentic? Am I special? And Saturn, am I ostracized? Am I misunderstood? Am I an outsider? Or it could be a relationship with the status quo. Damn the man. Screw the way it's been. Screw the establishment. I'm doing something different, like that. And these experiences, they are so vital. I'm not at all demeaning them, because this is the Leela, right? This is the play. But again, stand back and imagine that these are like birds calling back and forth to one another in the jungles of infinity. And if you can sit sometimes and just hear it that way, hear the themes that way, and cultivate the listener within, cultivate the observer within, tend to the what is the soul? Heraclitus, he said, the soul is explored forever to a depth beyond report. The soul, James Hillman describes the soul as the ground in which the different gods and archetypes play. And when the soul allows for these different complexes and gods and energies to play in it, hold space for it in love, then the character of the soul starts to show itself. Turns out that we're like an invisible bird walking through paradise. And the more we hold space for our own infinite experiences, the more that what starts to shine forth is our true form, our true spiritual form. We are an animal in the garden of creation as well. And we have our own unique song and our own unique call. We are our own unique archetype, you could say. And how does that come forth? Well, it only comes forth by being in relationship to things, because we can only discover who we are in relationship to other things, to other gods and people and situations and energies and experiences and failures and successes and losses and redemptions and all sorts of things. And as we go along, the more and more that we start to call it all good, that we start to raise the proverbial, the Buddhist boon and say yes to all of it, the more that our own plumage starts to come out, the more that our own golden feathers and halo starts to appear. And we start to take up a divine participation in that reality that goes beyond the fixation with the alternations and trying to solve them or get out of them or something like that. We're just getting comfortable here. It's just like, in some ways it's that simple. Well, okay, what about other planets like Mercury and Jupiter? Mercury says you need to question things more. You need to be more rational. Be an inquiring mind. Don't just take what this person's saying, just think for yourself. Kill the Buddha if you see them. These are mercurial things. Jupiter, on the other hand, says, look for the way, look for the wisdom, look for the descending spiritual masters, whatever, they're both divine. What about, let's say, Venus and Mars? Look for the peaceful, pleasant experience. No, no, no. Mars says, put some spikes around your collar. Get a spiked collar on and headbutt life. Get a mohawk and throw your fist into it. You know what I mean? It's like Mars is not like don't make me try to participate in your denial of the edge and blood redness of life. Don't make me participate in your Sound of Music delusion here. I'm here to get punched. You know what I mean? Or to punch someone. And and that's kind of a caricature of Mars versus Venus. And people will endlessly try to resolve those things, thinking, well, in this life, you see, in past 3 lifetimes, I didn't stand up for myself. And so, and I just was so passive and I preferred peace. And so, in this lifetime, I'm sure the birth chart is just telling me that I've got to become more aggressive and da 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 da. And it's like, yeah, but stand back and think of what ancient seers told us. Karma is anadi, beginningless. And how many previous lifetimes have you been doing things? Turns out there's actually no way of it's innumerable. You can't even count it. And how many future potential lifetimes could I have involved in the same things? Innumerable. And these things don't go away. Experience doesn't go away. You don't just blend or merge into white light when you reach enlightenment. Not according to the ancient seers. No. Instead, what happens is you gradually start. It's like waking up and realizing you're at the most amazing concert ever happening ever in the history of ever, and you're jamming along with the band. You know what I mean? And that's the reality that you're waking up to. You always have been and you always will be. And there's nothing at stake. It's okay. There is something at stake. I mean, there is, but it's just like there being something at stake in if you've ever listened to Mozart's Requiem or Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, or if you ever watched a horror movie, something really dark and heavy and something like that, you get so invested in it. And that's real. That's a real experience of that. The kind of unenlightened version of that is we think that is absolutely it. And we think that the outcome of that experience is kind of it will determine our state of being or mind or happiness once and for all. Everything is at stake. The enlightened person goes, while you're in it, there's something at stake, but also these stories go on and on and on and on. And it's that ingredient that sets you free to experience the full depth and range of emotion. And it's like being able to truly enjoy the ride as deeply as you can. So so that's I know I'm getting pretty far out now, so I'll try to rein it back in. But so the main thing I wanted to communicate today was that people come into readings and they generally think there's got to be something I've got to solve. There's got to be something I've got to fix. So I'm gonna leave you with a very simple story at the end here. In yoga philosophy, there is something called the modes of material nature. And the modes of material nature are goodness, passion, and ignorance. There's a story that's going to come after this. Excuse me. So these 3 modes of material nature are always blending, mixing, dominating, suppressing one another. And it's the combinations of these material forces that are creating the endless varieties of experiences that we've been describing through the planets and houses and signs and all the dichotomies and so forth. Well, another mistake that people make is in thinking, hey, it's all about creating goodness. But it turns out that goodness is like the byproduct of spiritual life, not the point of spiritual life, but the byproduct of it. So what does it look like if you're moving through the jungle of creation and you meet a soul who's truly gotten comfortable in this infinite, amazingly profound landscape? What do they look like? What is their what kind of energy do they carry in terms of the world and all these energies that are circulating in it? Well, they carry goodness. And what does goodness look like? I'm going to read you a little quote from Hildegard von Bingen. Let's see if I can bring it up. here it is. It's describing the Holy Spirit here. This Hildegard von Bingen is describing the Holy Spirit, but here's what she writes. She is so bright and glorious that you cannot look at her face or her garments for the splendor with which she shines. For she is terrible with the terror of the avenging lightning and gentle with the goodness of the bright sun. And both her terror and her gentleness are incomprehensible to humans. But she is with everyone and in everyone, and so beautiful is her secret that no person can know the sweetness with which she sustains people and spares them in inscrutable mercy. That's a description of the Holy Spirit, which is a really nice description, but it could also be a description of the mode of goodness in this world. So imagine that you get up in the morning. If you've ever had a morning like this, you get up in the morning, you meditate, and you're going to have, I don't know, maybe you exercise or something. There's just that feeling of everything being clear and strong and bright and yet very calm. As a yoga studio owner, over the past 10 years, I have seen this so consistently after yoga classes. What is in the space of a yoga studio after a yoga class? The material mode of goodness. It's peaceful, it's lucid, it's strong, but also delicate. It's like a beautiful pond that's very clear and still reflecting the sunlight. So you have that feeling of just this like amazing strength, but it's very calm and serene, and there's a fragility to it. Now, this energy, if you carry it out of the yoga studio with you, what happens? You get on the phone, you tend to have a more mindful conversation. And if there is a little bit of stuck karma, you'd be surprised how much the vibration after a simple yoga class or meditation session, like how effective it can be at moving that energy in a constructive direction. But just like a yoga class, remember that ancient yogis, what were they doing with yoga asana, with the postures and things like that? They were specifically using that energy that was generated through postures and breathing techniques to situate themselves to sit for very long periods of time in meditation. Because the point of cultivating this consciousness, this this cosmic awareness, this cosmic consciousness, you could even say, is that it's that mode of goodness that you develop through different practices, that it is conducive to communion. So in other words, why do you get up in the morning and run or work out or do some exercises or something like that? Specifically so that you can sit, and so that energy can be used to drop into the heart, to drop into stillness and awareness of your very being, right? But frequently people think it's the opposite. Frequently people think that the point of spiritual life is to get into that space where that kind of lucid, serene energy is generated, so then you can go out and use it to do something constructive, effective, manifest something, get something, improve upon something. And the tricky thing is, the reason that it's so seductive is because when you feel that way, when you feel that kind of high, runners feel it too. People who work out feel it. Anytime you're taking care of the temple, the mind, the body, you're getting clean, you're putting water in, you're getting good sleep, the mode of goodness starts to develop. And that energy has a way, it's very powerful, and it tends to radiate this kind of light, bright clearness, and that does things. And don't get me wrong, those things are really nice. Like, you can genuinely, again, make improvements or get things done, or suddenly the karma in your life starts getting better. And for ancient philosophers, this mode of goodness really was good, and it really could do good things in your life. But again, just imagine that you're doing all of this good and you're getting all of this good energy is creating good things, but it can only last for so long, right? It can only last for so long because it dissipates eventually. If you've ever been to a yoga class, you know that the high you feel the next day, 2 days later, if you don't practice again, it's not there as much. And then people go like, oh, I've got to go through another purge or another detox, or I've got to get clean and clear again. And that's because they're living from the sense of like, I need to be harnessing that power of that energy of goodness so that good things can happen and good things can get done. But that's backward. And the reason that it's backward, again, is because what are we actually supposed to be using the mode of goodness for? to when that mode is generated, that mode is the most conducive to going right into the soul. So if you can generate that energy through healthy living, through exercise, through diet, through getting up early in the morning, whatever you do, and you feel that, like, that vibrancy, that peace, that clarity, when you feel that, what you're supposed to be doing with that ideally is that's when you sit down to pray. That's when you sit down to listen. That's when you sit down to talk to God, to chant your mantras, to meditate, to do whatever you do to commune with the soul. Use the energy there to commune with the soul. Because what you want to do is not go out and progress and get a bunch of good things. Eventually, that pious karma credit runs out, and then you have to go back and keep doing that. And it's an endless hamster wheel. And it's exhausting eventually. What you're looking for is the most sustainable place to draw upon, and that is actually who and what you are, not what you do, not what energy you generate through effort and what you go and do with it, even if it is really high vibrational stuff. Which, again, yoga philosophy, very clear about this. The mode of goodness is good, but it's not the point. You're supposed to transcend even the mode of goodness in order to find the enduring and eternal qualities of the heart and soul. So now here's the story. I have to be slightly anonymous with this, but I know someone in my life, and it's been really cool to see this happen. So this is someone who, for a long time in their life, here's what they thought. They thought, I'm actually going to share you two stories because another one just came to my mind. So they thought, I suck at this thing and I've got to get better at it. I lack discipline. I tend to get sloppy and forgetful and all over the place, and I don't finish things that I start. Can anyone relate to that? Right? I know I can sometimes. And so I've got to buckle up and get disciplined and blah, 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 blah. And along with this came this one particular vice, which was smoking cigarettes. So this person's like, I can't keep smoking. Along with my other disorganized habits, I can't keep smoking. And they thought, I know that I'm going to be happier and that I'm going to advance spiritually when I get better at these things, when I get better control of my life, more disciplined, and when I quit smoking. Now, on one level, I want to be like, you go, like do it, because it's true. You will be happier if you cultivate those qualities, but you won't be as happy as if you prioritize the awakening of the indwelling spirit. And the reason for this is that it is that indwelling spirit that will naturally start sloughing off the things that drag it down and start inhabiting the things that make it happy. Otherwise, it's like you're pulling weeds in a garden where they're never ending, So what happens? So this is someone I've been counseling, and I suggested, like, taking up a spiritual practice every single day. Make it the priority of your life every single day. And just recently, they contacted me and said, "You wouldn't believe this, but I quit smoking." And I said, "Well, that's amazing. Congrats. How did it happen?" And they're like, "I don't know. One day I just sort of, it's like I'm looking at the cigarette and I'm going, wait a sec. Why am I doing this?" See, the only way you can look at your habit, and rather than going like, it's a problem that I have to fix, and if I fix it, I'll get happier. Instead, you have to look at it and go, who am I? And who do I think I am that I would do this? Right? Or even, so basically the quality of instead of saying, I've got to fix problems, they started asking the questions through daily prayer, through daily practice. Who am I? Why am I here? What is real? What is true? What is real happiness? Not just temporary goodness, which is powerful, but what is, like, never ending, abiding peace? Is that even a possibility? Do I believe in that? Like, really legitimately spending time with those questions every single day. And as this person started to do that, instead of being like, cigarette is problem, they went like, cigarette is an eternal thing. Like, cigarette is paper and like tobacco and chemicals, but like, how did chemicals come about and cigarettes come about, and how do habits form, and why do people do this, and what are they seeking, and why am I seeking this? And you see what I'm saying? And it was only from the standpoint of that relationship with cigarettes that this person finally naturally just said, I don't want this. And the thing that they described that was really incredible was they said it was like it was never even a problem to begin with. It was never even a problem to begin with. Wow. And now they also don't have to look at cigarettes now from a condemning perspective, because they're going like, oh yeah, maybe, and this is real reflections. Maybe it's too late. Maybe I've already done irreversible damage and that will kill me in this body in this lifetime. But at least I somehow know in my soul now I've asked a deeper question and I've accessed something deeper and truer about who I am. And so even if cancer were to eat my body, it can't eat my soul. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? So that's a really profound breakthrough for someone to have. And so again, like generally speaking, when I work with people, people come in and they have a lot of assumptions about, well, if I fix something and get I could just get more control and get better at it, and so forth. I can give people all the insight in the world through their birth chart, as far as I'm capable of what in their chart might be deficient, what to get better at, because there's tons of them. You can very clearly see which weeds might need to be pulled. But if you're not teaching someone to whistle while they work, if someone is not focused on that, it really doesn't matter what weeds I tell them to pull. Do you see what I mean? So now, the second story that I wanted to share, which is very similar. I had a woman come in for a reading one time, and she said, she knew a bit about astrology, and she was like, I've got all these seventh house issues, and I know that in this lifetime, I'm supposed to learn how to be in a positive relationship. I'm supposed to be in a relationship. Like, okay, well, first of all, I'm not going to say this necessarily, but first of all, in the big picture, no, you're not. Like in the big picture, no, it doesn't matter that much. It doesn't matter as much as you think it does. The fact that you think that you should be in a relationship, that you're so adamant about that, is probably more important than whether or not you are or aren't. That's probably more of the problem than whether you actually end up in a successful one or not. But anyway, the chart may tell us that there is relatively more difficult karma in the area of relationships. So, okay, maybe there's weeds over there, and maybe a person would be happier pulling some of them and getting better at relationships, right? So I'm going to just acknowledge that. And I said, okay, so she wants to know, when is the relationship coming that will be this experience that I'm going to sort of level up from? In other words, when is my soulmate coming so that I can grow and learn in the ways that I'm supposed to? And this is what a brave soul to say, I know it's not going to be easy. I know I've got a ton to learn, but I want to know when that person's going to come in and when I'm going to learn all this stuff from it. Fair enough. So they ended up having a transit that was about a year out, that I said, the next meaningful relationship I can see is about a year out. Okay. So, then in about, and we met every 6 months actually to discuss their chart. And I proposed to them at that time. I said, okay, look, here is my advice for you. Yes, you may have a lot to learn about relationships, or there may be a lot of experiences in relationships, but I promise you that what will make these experiences truly rewarding for the sake of your soul's sojourn, its infinite sojourn, is whether or not you are cultivating its conscious, it's whether or not you are tending to it, and that will require a daily practice. So we talked about some different practices. She ended up taking up prayer journaling and maybe some exercise or something like that. So in about 6 more months, when I met with her, it was really profound to see what had happened. Basically, what had occurred was she had said essentially what I had said at the beginning, which was that I'm realizing that come what may, if a relationship comes or if it doesn't come, I realize that that's not really the point. It only took 6 months of someone having a daily spiritual practice for them to let go of what up until midlife had been this feeling of being sort of cursed because they hadn't had successful, happy relationships, and the feeling like they're not going to level up until they have one. 6 months later of a daily spiritual practice, and they're saying, I still want one. I still feel like I have things to learn, but I'm also really deeply letting go of whether or not I ever have one or ever reach this place. You know what I mean? Okay, so then 6 months later, now it's a year, and a relationship, in fact, did come into her life. But now she's got a year of spiritual cultivation, of spiritual practice. Long story short, she's mortified. Oh my God, the relationship is here, and now I'm starting to get really anxious about it again. Is it going to go like every other relationship went? Is it going to be another failure? I feel this pressure that it has to be successful. And what did we say? We said, well, here are the dates, here are the times when the relationship will get more intense, or the fruits of this karma will blossom in this relationship. And it was another year out. And so I said, look, just in my opinion, go for the ride, and don't worry about if it's good or bad. Just chop wood, carry water, so to speak, and keep your spiritual practice going. A year later, she came back for the reading, and they had just broken up. Okay, so when she told me, I just immediately, I assumed, great, that she's probably devastated. She's probably let go of her spiritual practice. But no, it was the complete opposite. She had maintained her spiritual practice, more or less. I mean, we all have times where, we're not perfect with it, but she had mainly she had maintained her practice. And at the end of that year, they had broken up. And I said, oh, I'm really sorry to hear that. I know that you really wanted it to work out. And she was like, nope. I feel like this was the most rewarding relationship experience that I ever could have had, because I realize now that even if I die and I never marry someone, that it's okay, right? Because these experiences are enough, like all of them, whatever they might be. They are all so beautiful. And I was really blown away, because it wasn't what I was expecting. And we're talking about a span of basically 2 years between the first time I talked to her and this breakup. And having a daily practice in her life, it changed her entire paradigm on what defined her success or her happiness. Is life perfect? Is she, levitating? No, neither am I. And neither are any of us really who have spiritual practices. But if I had to conclude this talk with one thing, it's that doing good, becoming good, even creating the best possible world that we can, is not the point. It is good to do so, just like the mode of goodness really is good. But from the perspective of the spiritual being, all experience without exception is good. So there's a way in which astrology can help us improve ourselves and help us understand the difference in some ways between what's good and what's bad, what's painful and what's filled with joy, and so forth. But we can't put the cart before the horse. So my advice for you is, whether you're an astrology student, or you do readings for other people, or you're just getting interested in astrology, the simple 2 pieces of advice that I have are this: cultivate a daily spiritual practice and stick to it, and you will find that the way you study and relate to astrology is profoundly more valuable and less anxiety producing and overall helpful, right? That's my first piece. And the second piece is, try to ingest astrological information from people who are not constantly preaching a gospel of some kind of heroic, redemptive end state that we're all trying to get to by constantly making ourselves or everything around us better, gooder, lighter. Gooder isn't a word. Or trying to make it all lighter and better in some measurable way. And if it helps you, you can think about yourself walking through this, this infinitely beautiful, mysterious, dark, exotic garden. And the real happiness is found when we find that it is good to be here, regardless of what's happening. Because ultimately, even though so many wild things happen here, there's ultimately nothing is at stake, and love sustains us always. It always has, and it always will. So I would love to, I'll see if there's any questions here in the chat box, and then I'm going to stop the live stream for the day. Oh, cool. From Botswana. Wow. Texas, Southern California, Colorado, Canada. Amazing. Cool that you're all here. Let's see. What is life? What purpose does life have? My question is, what is life? What purpose does life have? Well, I mean, again, this is just you're taking up the perspective of ancient yogis and the seers that the Pythagoreans, the Hermeticists, the Platonists, things like that. Um, Life has too many purposes to name, and there's also, in a sense, no purpose. It's sort of like again, I'm just use a dating metaphor. Have you ever gone out on a date? Well, what's the purpose of a date, right? You could say, well, it's to get laid or to get a spouse or to, blah, blah, blah. But real intimacy, when you go on an adventure with a friend or you fall in love with someone, the purpose, you could say, is love, is connection, is intimacy. And if you are creative and at least the best relationships in my life are the ones that somehow manage to take any and every experience that comes along and see it as valuable material for the growth and depth of that relationship. Relationships become soulful. And I think purpose is sometimes kind of an enemy of the cultivation of relation or of love. So try to think less, in my advice anyways, it's like try to think less about purpose and try to think more about intimacy, curiosity, things like that. Where do you look for these deficiencies in the chart? Yeah, that's in my year 1 course. We definitely look at that because, again, it is a totally valid question that people have. I'm kind of, I'm like talking out both sides of my mouth. Like, it's not the point to go and get better at stuff. But weirdly, self-improvement plays this very important role. When you cultivate the life of the soul, everything starts to improve. It's just amazing. When you try to improve without the life of the soul, everything eventually gets very exhausting and the results are only temporary. Let's see. Astrology is not spirituality, but you can put your spirituality into astrology. No, that's not true. Astrology is astrology is like a language of reality, and reality is spiritual. Let's see. Keep going. Going down. I needed to hear this. Oh, good. I'm glad. Let's see. Going down. I think that's it. I don't see any more questions. So definitely not a word. Someone, yeah, gooder. It's like something I would call my daughter on, like, oh, that's not a word, sweetie. What is the difference between mode of goodness and transcendence of that? Okay, yeah, that's a really good question. In the Bhagavad Gita and in the Bhagavatam, it's described like this. Like, imagine that yeah, I mean, in a sense, it's like imagine that imagine that you're in a theater, right? And you're watching a play, and in the play, there's like heroes and villains, right? Okay, that sounds familiar to everyone. Now, in goodness, the mode of goodness, you're sitting in your seat and you're captivated by the plight of the protagonist and his or her or their struggle with the antagonist. And so you're going like, I'm so invested in the good, the right outcome here that it conquers and triumphs over the bad outcome, the dark outcome. Whereas spiritual goodness or the transcendence of the mode of goodness says, look at this divine play. Look at the amazingly beautiful, infinitely complex, intelligent, mind-blowing interaction between light and dark. You see what I mean? And now imagine that consciousness is there while you're also on the stage, inhabiting the roles and the drama, and everything feels like it's at stake. Do you see what I'm saying? So that heaven is described as a place where there's nothing that it's not like heaven is just pure white light where nothing's happening, right? There's drama, there's intensity. The same dualities that exist here are described in the yogic tradition as existing in higher realms of consciousness. It's just that they're experienced from the standpoint of having an appreciation for eternity, right? Right? It's like I said earlier, you can just feel and sense, and you know that these different characters on the stage and different modes and good and bad and light and dark, you know that they're all a part of the whole. And when you have that, they are no longer threatening. You can't be threatened by that which you don't feel like you need to defend yourself against, right? It's like a core statement in the Course in Miracles too, if you ever read that book. So yeah. What would an extreme chart consist of? Oh gosh, I don't know. So many different things. Part 2 of Planetary Misunderstandings will come next Monday, I think. Way more gooder. Yeah. Yes, beautiful. It's like Arjuna on the battlefield. Yeah, exactly. Arjuna's like, I just want to go off to the cave because look, this is like terrible. And Arjuna's like, nope, that's not yoga. You've got to be on the field where something is at stake. Yoga is something that's achieved here. Like, not by going away from here because there's something about it that you don't like. Right? So, yeah. Are there always more lessons in your chart, or can you learn them all and be done until your next life? No, I think I've said that enough today. Yes, there's always more. It's like that. That's why I was using the analogy of the weeds, right? It's like, turns out in this jungle that, flowers and weeds they both grow. Invasive species, predators and prey, beauty and ugliness, terror and awe and majesty. It's all here. It's all real. So, yeah. So, I hope that this has been helpful. I know that these are like really big macro cosmic realizations or insights, but people sometimes ask, like, how did you get into yoga? And I'm like, in part, it's like doing 10,000 charts, because the more you do charts, the more, and you study this karmic language and the cosmology and the metaphysics, the more that you start to see it. And that's the real gift of astrology. I rarely ever even look at my own chart anymore because I don't have to. It's like, well, my chart's demonstrating it, but so is every single person's chart that I talk to every day. And the heavens are doing it every day, and it reflects in the news and blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, in a sense, people will say, oh, the more enlightened you get, the less you care about astrology. That's not true. It's that the less anxious astrology makes you and the less obsessed you get about it. And for me, that's just happens to have translated into looking at my chart less over the years. But it's still there's still so much value in looking at charts too. So it's not like I have anything against it. All right. Well, that's what I've got for today. I hope you guys have a great weekend and that you're enjoying this series. Please feel free to leave your insights in the chat box. I'd love to hear from you guys now or afterward. info@nightlightastrology.com is my email address. My course, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic, is coming up in November, starts November 14th. It's 30 lessons in ancient Hellenistic astrology. About 10 of them are spent with live clients, implementing the theory that we learn in class with live clients and seeing how it's done. We learn a lot about the spiritual philosophy of ancient astrologers. And there's 12 guest lecturers. You can participate remotely or live. There is need-based tuition if you need it, especially if you're struggling due to COVID-19. And also we have an early bird rate that's in effect right now. So you can check all of that out on my website, nightlightastrology.com. Also, I was on Stormy Grace's YouTube channel today doing a talk on the mystical Saturn, the mystical and often misunderstood Saturn. So if you are interested, you can go check that out as well. If you know Stormy, she's really cool. She's speaking, she's giving a talk in my fall speaker series coming up, and was on her channel today. And it was a really fun talk that we did as well. All right, take it easy, everyone. Bye.